Hi, I'm Colin with Castlebrec. In this video, we'll take a look at the SendGrid API, sending emails with dynamic templates and programmatic replacement of data placeholders. So what were we trying to do here? For us, we wanted a solution that would allow us to maintain email domain reputation, maintain IP reputation, so your messages aren't getting blocked and quarantined. And when we have customers that kept programmatically sending emails with their primary mail server, so these are transactional things, batches that run overnight and send a whole bunch of emails out maybe to their customers and vendors, and they were taking hits to their IP and domain reputation. So using an external dedicated service for email submission means partially that the provider can take care of IP reputation, but also major email security vendors are likely to come to know the IP space of major providers like SendGrid. And priority 3 types of goals, not as important, but somewhat important. It's nice to remove dependency on internal infrastructure. So we can program mail sending against multiple internal SMTP servers and have retry logic in case one's available if they're being patched, restarted. But it's nice to use an external service, remove dependencies. Then there's less to think about as there's upgrades and changes needed. It's less likely to have side effects. Really important goals, though, is we want to automate the merge of custom data into email templates, and we want to allow non-developers, people who are not technical, to be able to create and maintain the templates. So if you've got marketing or other non-technical people that want to create and maintain those templates, it's nice to have a service that allows them to do that in a simple fashion. So let's take a look at how this works. So you have server-side code. Your server-side code is going to programmatically create an email message, and it's going to need to use your Twilio SendGrid API. And you'll use a sender and recipient info, create your email payload, including your subject and your body, with the API that gets submitted to SendGrid. And then SendGrid, on your behalf, goes from their servers to the recipient's email server by looking up the MX record of the recipient email domain and sending it to the appropriate servers. And important to note, your language can be anything that speaks HTTPS because their API appears to be a REST endpoint that they've wrapped some libraries around to make it more convenient. So you can call it like you would any REST endpoint. They actually provide language-specific APIs. There's Java, Node, C#, Go, PHP, Python, and Ruby. If you're programming in one of those languages, my thought is why not just use their library? You can do it yourself and just call the REST API, but they make it pretty convenient for the library. In this video, we'll use Java, but we'll also show you some C# and Node at the end to show you kind of if it's the same thing in those other languages. All right, so there's three demos. The first one is just get it to send an email, any old email. Looking at that one, demo number 1, send unformatted email. So this is a really simple Java class. This is a Gradle project inside VS Code. Let me get right into it. We've imported some SendGrid objects, and here these are all their objects in their API. So you're going to say an email for an address from is new email. You pass it the address. So that's your from address. Email to is a recipient's address. Just so I'm not putting the emails on screen, I've configured those through environment variables or constants. Here's your subject. So in this case, it's email demo 1 unformatted email. And this is going to be the body. So here you can create their content object. And in this case, it'll be text/plain. So we're just going to do a totally unformatted email here. All we're doing is putting new lines into it. So when you do a plain text content, new lines are respected. So you'll see we're doing a couple new lines in a few places here. So we'll have 3 lines. Your request will be processed, another line, another line. Okay, there we go. And then we'll create a mail object. Again, this is still the SendGrid API. We're going to pass in the from, the to, the subject, and the content. And we're going to create a SendGrid object and pass it our API key. I've stored it ahead of time in an environment variable, so I'm calling system.getEnv to grab that environment variable. And we're going to create a request object. That's the SendGrid request object. We're going to set method post. Tell it which endpoint we want to call. They have multiple endpoints for different things. So it's mail send. Set the body. Now this is the object we created before that had all those things in it. You call mail.build and you can pass that to the body. Now what that's actually going to do is it's going to create this big JSON string representing everything about the email message we want to send. And then we call sg.api and we pass it the request. We'll get back a response. If all goes well, response.getStatus code is going to be a 202 accepted. And it'll give us back the body and the header. So let me go ahead and run this and I'll show you. Okay, we did indeed get back a 202. That's great. Let me show you what the results will be, just so I'm not bringing up my mail client on screen. That's what your totally unformatted email will look like. You'll see the body's just all the same font, and there's some new lines in there. Okay, let's add a little bit of formatting to it. So demo number 2 does that. In demo number 2, this time we're going to create a string. We'll use string builder to create a string, and we're going to append one line at a time to it, and then afterwards we'll call .toString on that string builder object, which will just make a string with all this concatenated. I only mention that in case you're watching and you're not a Java developer. So this time, a few things to note. We're doing HTML, not plain text. We'll create H1, H2, H3 tags, paragraph tags, and divs. We can also do inline CSS styles. So here's some inline CSS, and we're escaping the double quotes. So we'll do a background color of blue, a color for the font of white, and we'll set some padding around it. An H2 and H3, a paragraph, and then a div colored similarly to that H1. So it'll be reverse text, blue background, white text, some padding. And this time, when we do the content, we're going to specify text HTML. The rest is pretty consistent, so let me just run it. There we are. We got a status code 202 back. Beautiful. That worked. So let me show you the results. This time it'll look like that. Now, obviously, if you're generating code server side, or you're using code to generate HTML server side, you're probably not going to want to hard code it inline in your code like that. You'll probably use external templates and some type of templating library for replacement. But for a demo, this is more than appropriate. Okay, so this doesn't really meet the goals though, not all of them. We want to allow a non-developer to create and maintain templates. So let me show you that. In SendGrid, you can create what they call dynamic templates. And here's a dynamic template. And here, it has blocks, so you can define these. Let me just lose this and create it again. I'll get rid of the 2 images. So if you want to add something, you go to build image, and they've got drag targets here. So let me drag it to this drag target. If we've uploaded a few images, which we have here, we can insert them. I'll do that one more time here. I'm going to drag one. Actually, drag it here. Sorry, and I'll pick the logo. And move that down. Okay, so if we wanted it to look like that, we'd hit save. I'm not going to bother. So you would just hit save. I can, it's okay. And something else that's noteworthy is you need to pass your template ID. It's found right here. You can't just pass the friendly name of it. You have to use the template ID to reference this with the API. Now, if you've gone into Design Library and created some templates, then these alone aren't enough to use with your API. You have to go a step further, go email API, dynamic templates. You have to create one. When you create one, you can pick something from your design library. So if you already created it there, you're fine. Let me show you how it works programmatically. So demo 3 is uncommented, so that'll run. Similar, we'll address it similarly, so I'm not going to worry about that. But this personalization object, add dynamic template data. Now, when I was looking at docs on the web, I kept finding references to transactional templates, and I think it referenced the prior version of the API. So I'd like to cite the source, the URL where it wasn't on Twilio SendGrid docs, it was elsewhere. So I apologize, I'm not citing the source, but I found somewhere that this is the right way to do it with version 3 of the API. Also, you don't want to put the curly braces around your parameter names. You just put the name of the parameter. So first name, Joe, and you can see the rest of them. And so if somebody had filled out a web form and you caught a bunch of values from their form submission, then on the server side, you can catch this stuff, compose an email, and send it. probably after you've persisted it. We would do it out of process, not inside an HTTP request from in a web app. We would persist it somewhere and let a separate process pick it up and send an email so that you're not doing something inside the HTTP request. But this is just a CLI program. So I'll go ahead and run this. There we are. We got a 202 back. That's great. Let me show you what the results will look like. There's a dynamic template. That's without the images inserted, but the rest of it's consistent. So and I captured this screenshot earlier. So pretty straightforward, and I hope this is helpful to somebody. Looking at C# and Node.js, they're pretty consistent. So again, these libraries that Twilio provide wrap their own REST API and make some convenient objects that you can use instead of just calling the REST API. And the style is a little bit different. You'll see some async stuff. No problem. I think if you're a C# developer, you'll pick it up equally quickly in C#. Ditto if you're a Node developer. So hopefully this is helpful to somebody and saves you a little bit of time. Again, the main thing that I noted, the few little things that got me in the weeds I've pointed out in this video, those being where you create your template, where to get the template ID, and that to replace your parameters, use this method called add dynamic template data. So thanks a million for watching. Hope this was helpful. Take care.